Okay. It's been a while. Let's see if I'm actually running here. The internet can totally see you now. To stop using... I've never read that before. Hey, Trico, what's going on? Yes, it is real. Hey, Austin, what's going on? Homely? I did a live stream just the other week. What are you guys talking about? Feeling a bit under the weather. How you doing? I'm doing alright. Everything's pretty average over here, I guess. Can't complain too much. Let me scoot my chair over. Ow. Was probably already asleep. Last stream was a month ago. Whatever. I should probably turn that stream mode on, but whatever. Okay, so what are we doing? Well, we got some progress to make on Fathom. That's the I almost said hammer shot. That's the sludge fire. For those of you who are unaware, working on this guy. This front bit right here, might as well. So this is this guy. And we're going to make some molded parts for this. Also thinking about molding this, but this is going to be a much bigger endeavor. I'm still not 100% how I want to do this yet. I don't have it mapped out completely. So I do eventually want to do this. But for now, we're just going to set this aside and worry about just these two pieces. So we got the trigger here, which I've already started. And then we have the hammer release, which is to actually open the brake action here. So this one, they're both functional pieces. They both actually do something. But this trigger isn't under a lot of stress. It's just poking a catch, and it has a lot of good leverage there. So this isn't under too much stress. Not too worried about it. This one, however, is going to be under quite a bit of stress, not only from this little spring action right here. It's got a little built-in plastic spring, but it's also tugging quite a bit of force up here, and it's using its leverage against itself. So there's going to be a lot of different points here that are going to need to be filled in with something. It doesn't really matter what, as long as it's not a splits into two pieces. So great, it's complicated. The part's complicated, the mold isn't, but as long as the material doesn't have any sulfur in it, it'll cure properly. Otherwise, I would have to use a different grade silicone. I use platinum cure silicone. There's also tin cure, which I'm pretty sure can handle that stuff, but it's still not great for it. In any case, the stuff I use doesn't have sulfur in it anyway, because I've been doing this for so long. So in case anybody is... I'm totally ignoring the chat, by the way. It's been a minute since I've live streamed, so please forgive me. I hate when people don't look at the stream for too long. I just got my Hyper in, and I love it. Is that the new one from Slug? Epic. Hey, what's going on, man? How long ago did you start this again? Not long. 4 minutes. I just started. You and Trico were the first to join. If anybody is confused, oh hey, did you see the Blue Angels yesterday? No, I didn't. Unfortunately, I was working, and I work tomorrow, so I'm not going to see them. But that's okay. Hawkeye's not paying attention to everyone, right? Some people might be confused because I've never shown molding at all on my channel before. It's what I'm known for. Hey, Kelly. But I have never actually shown it on my channel, and that was very intentional. It was my business. That's how I made money. So something that took me, now this is going on, what, 11 or 12 years that I've been doing this. I mean, it's taken me that long and tens of thousands of dollars to figure out what I've figured out. So it didn't really make a whole lot of sense financially to, that sentence almost didn't happen, sense financially to show everyone. But now that I'm not doing it anymore, I don't really care. So that's what we're going to be doing today. There's not going to be any silicone moving today, but it's just mold prep. But anybody who has ever done this knows that it's all in the prep. Everything is in the prep. You either prepare it good, or you prepare it bad, and everything goes terribly. There's no really in between there. You can kind of get a half-ass mold if you just like do whatever, but in my opinion, that's junk. So, opinion. 11, 12 years, you're old. If we're talking any professional resins, it's actually closer to 16 years. Hawkeye isn't old. He was a child. Everything goes terribly. Hey, Sonic, what's going on? 2020 in a nutshell. Yeah, pretty much. Alright, so we got to think of a few things when we're starting these. I'm just going to explain everything because I might as well. Hey, bud, not much. I'm going to explain everything because I might as well. So I do reinforce my parts. There are other people that mold shit out there that don't. They don't touch the parts at all, and that's well and fine. But I do have my reasons for touching up my parts. These ones actually don't need to be sanded because I don't plan on putting LEDs into them. I'm sure iterations in the future I might cast up a few sets and put LEDs into them, but these ones in particular, I'm not planning on LEDing right away, so I'm actually not going to sand them. I could, don't need to. Who knows? I might. But I know a lot of people like the really transparent ones that are like glass or whatever. I actually don't like those, and there's a very specific reason why. If you're trying to shine LEDs through them, it's like shining LEDs through glass. You don't see anything. There's no wow factor at all, especially in person. It's less obvious in a picture, but in person, it doesn't look good at all, in my opinion, of course, which is why I've always sanded my stuff. But again, this is actually just going to be casted in the same glow-in-the-dark that's on the handle here. So either way, wow, that's blown out. So either way, I don't care. But yeah, so the reinforcement. So there's two different reasons why I really touch up these parts. One is for ease of molding, and then the other reason would be for reinforcement. These ones, this brace right here is for reinforcement. My camera's never going to focus because it never has. It hates me. But this bracket right here underneath is for reinforcement. Probably doesn't need it, but there was no point in not putting it there. So you might as well. That's going to support this ledge a little bit better. Maybe make it last a little bit longer, be a little more durable. Maybe won't have as much flex in there if there was any flex. It's just something that helps. And then this little platform is actually just a design flaw from Hasbro themselves, because it's like if you've ever opened one up, it's like a skinny little platform right here, and then that goes and onto a rounded stem right here for the catch to push. That's really stupid. You have a really thin thing right here and then a rounded part right here, and then it slips off. You'll still activate the catch, but it feels like garbage. Anyone who's ever fired one. For some reason, mine is the only one that I've ever felt that doesn't slip, but that's not an excuse. So I made this a full platform instead of a skinny, stupid little edge. I just cut it off and then glued this on there. And so that should feel a lot smoother. Now, what have I missed? Okay, I'm supposed to be studying. Hey, what's up, man? Kevin. Hello. What's going on, man? Studying while watching Hawkeye. I would if I was like 3 different lectures. Okay. And then the other reason is for ease of molding. I'm not going to bother because I don't really care about this one too much, and this isn't going to be something that I'm selling to everybody. So I really don't care as long as it's not affecting any of the aesthetics. Places that would be held up are like in these little ridges for the silicone. You might get a bubble in there, but if you pour it correctly, it won't. That's not going to be an issue for the way I'm orienting this. For the silicone as well, there might be some pockets up in here, maybe on this side if I was doing the other side. But there isn't really going to be that much of an issue for that, mainly because I know what the hell I'm doing. So basically, we're going to take one of these rods. I've never used these before. Usually I use wood, but I don't know where those are right now, and I don't feel like getting them. So I have these for Gunpla model building, so I might as well just use these because I don't care. They're not very stiff now that I'm actually looking at it, but they shouldn't be that long, so it should be fine. But basically, this is going to be attached something on the lines of right here, and then the platform is going to be like this, and it's going to be at an angle in 2 different directions. And so when I pour the silicone, it's going to come up like this, which means there's going to be potentially room for a bubble up here and up here. So to counteract that measure, what I'll do is I'll take the whole mold while I'm pouring it, and I'll actually cant it like this and start filling it up that way. And so it'll start filling up, and as soon as I cross this threshold here, this wall's right here, I'll barely be able to pour it in right here. As soon as the level comes up to the silicone right here, then I just level it back out and flip it back over. Any of the bubbles that were in here will naturally lift up. If I want to make sure that that's not going to get stuck, because it can get stuck, I'll take just something and irritate down here before I continue pouring, and then bring it the rest of the way up, and that will be fine. It really depends on the part in particular. It's just fluid dynamics, and it's something that you just kind of naturally learn, I guess. The more you do it, the easier it gets. Did I scare you? I need to go up. I missed some. Oof. Boo. Boo? I'm going to be mowing the lawn back out, so don't worry too much comments from me. Did I scare you? Do a Gunpla stream. Terrifies. See. Gunpla. Okay. I can't believe I have 10 people watching after all of this time of me not streaming. I don't know why the hell I have this here. So, probably because I needed it. These little holes right here, they're not screw ports. They're nothing. It's literally just a injection molding system thing. These aren't screw ports or anything like that. So these will all get covered up. It actually doesn't matter. I don't need to cover them up, because the worst case scenario is silicone actually does go in there. I doubt it will, but silicone does go in there. I just open the mold back up and cut them off. It's really not that big of a deal either way. If I was going to make this into a screw post, I have done that before. These guys here, I made these screw ports, and basically I put some glue in there, so it was a smooth dome, negative dome, and then after it comes out of the mold, I individually drill them, because it's not going to be really reliable to get a hole that small in something like that deep. And even if you could, it's going to make the old age a hell of a lot faster than if you were to not put those there. So that's never really a good idea. How many posted in the community tab? Oh, cool. Sweet. Hello, people from Allcom server. Just remember, sharpen those files, Ben. Yeah. You could use clay in holes as well. That's one thing that you do have to be careful of. You have to use certain clays. Like I said earlier, you can't use anything with sulfur in it. And if you use the wrong clay compound, a lot of clays have sulfur. So if you don't use one specifically that says no sulfur, you will get a incurable part in your silicone mold, and it will actually ruin your part. I prefer not to do clay just because I have other means. I also like to keep the masters, because the You can cast another master. It doesn't really matter. Like your first casting, just cast a master and keep that one. But I just prefer to keep all the masters. I still have everything because the molds do gold. I guess I won't really need these because I'm not going to put this into production, but it's just a good habit. So anyway, not really sure what this tab does. It might actually help in keeping the spring in place, but it's not really an issue anyway, so I'm not going to bother cutting it off. It's not that big of a deal. I really should probably fill these in just for simplicity's sake, but I'm not going to bother because I'm lazy. This one, however, is a lot more complicated, and I need to figure out some things. I need to cut down these posts because having a post this long is going to make the mold insufferable. It's not really doing much besides centering it in there, so they don't need to be long. I'll probably glue these together when they're out of the mold anyway because they're not going to be this friction. They don't have a lot of shrinkage to it. It's something to the effect of like less than 1%, but even so, it's going to be enough where it's no longer going to be doing this. So I could artificially beef it up, but I don't feel like dealing with the ratios and shit like that. It's not that important to me that these fit together like that, so whenever I'm building this up, though, I do need to make sure that everything is staying clear of itself. Little useless things like this nub, it doesn't do anything. I don't know why the hell that's there. It, I guess, keeps it in place, sort of, but I mean, not really. I guess it prevents this thing from collapsing down. It doesn't make any sense. There's no reason for it to be there, so that's gonna get cut off and shit like that. Because unless you make a vent there specifically, you're gonna have a little bit of a tough time getting that to be consistent. So you could just put a dead vent. So basically it's just a vent there, like literally going nowhere. But since I'm pressure casting it, the air bubble will actually go down here rather than into the part itself. But it's unnecessary, so why would you complicate your mold? Just realized the lack of your mom jokes will be in the stream because it's you. We're dealing with YouTube. Hawkeye, is YouTube being stupid right now? When you store your molds, do you use baby powder? No, I don't bother. Time to get serious. Someone texting me? No, that's just Discord. So anyway. Yeah, certain things like this hole right here goes all the way through, completely useless. That is actually big enough where silicone is probably going to get in there if I pour it right. So I will be covering that up. I'll be covering these holes up because I might as well while I'm at it. This one, I wasn't really doing much to it anyway. I just glued these on, so who cares? This one I'm actually doing stuff, so I might as well just like slap something in there. All of these little holes inside of here, I'll be filling all of these up. I'll be building up a little bit on the side here, so that it has a nice strong pivot point. These parts right here, it's indented back here just to make it thinner for the ABS. But obviously we don't really want it to be thinner, so I'm going to build this up a little bit. Not sure how much. It doesn't need to be everywhere because, again, these walls will interfere if I build it up along the wall inside of here. But mainly just this part right here I'm going to thicken up, and it can actually thicken up quite a bit if I really wanted to. We'll see how it goes. And then just re-drill this slot right here. I mean, yeah, won't bother filling anything up in these holes, and then just when I demold it for the first time, I'll just cut the silicone short so that it doesn't go all the way, so it matches the shorter posts a little bit better. I'll build up this side as well. In here, we don't have the same restriction, so it doesn't really matter where it goes. Yeah, I mean, it's pretty straightforward. Maybe I'll build up a little bit back here so that it just has a little bit extra strength so this thing isn't snapping right here. Not sure what I'm going to do about this spring. I've never tried to use silicone. I've never tried to use resin as a spring before. Probably not the best idea, but I mean, I don't really have any other choice, so I'm just going to try it. I might as well. It's probably not going to feel as nice, but you know, if anything, if it goes wrong, then I can just cut this off and then secure a piece of ABS or something, ABS plate to the bottom of this, and it will give me a spring. I'll have to do that for every one of these, but again, these aren't going into production, so who cares? No, like YouTube, Hawkeye. Oh, I see what you're talking about. Family friendly. Do you do two-part molds? No, I don't do two-part molds. I find them to be rather pointless for most applications. Resin, it just makes it complicated, more steps, less accurate. There's no point. Resin as a spring sounds like a bad idea. It does. It sounds like an awful idea. I'll be using slightly higher quality resin for these, but I don't think that's going to make a difference. I don't think it's going to work out. I think I'm going to have to do that backup method I was talking about. But whatever. It'll be a good learning experience. You haven't done anything. Yeah, I know. So this one I'm going to set aside for a second. We're going to start on this guy here. And like I said, I've already screwed with this. I'm not going to bother finishing or sanding any of this because this is all behind the shit anyway. You're really only going to see that, so none of this finish matters. I just got to make sure that there's no like dust in here before I close this mold. So I want to make sure that this is up because I'm going to cut a little vent for it up here. And I also need to come from this side. And it needs to be touching there. So I'm just going to go ahead and cut me off a little piece if I can find the right tool. And I'm not used to working with this tube at all, so we'll see how that goes. I'm way more used to wood of some kind, and who knows, maybe I have some popsicle sticks, I might end up using those. So just gonna cut it at a slight angle, and I'm gonna try to match the angle that I want. And it doesn't really matter what angle this is because there's no other reference cut on this. I can just twist it like this and then get whatever direction that I want out of it, as long as I have that angle there. I want to make sure I'm up in the corner. And even this rod doesn't have to be straight. It doesn't have to be straight up and down. It can be at an angle. It doesn't really matter. So that's about where I want it right there. So I'll go ahead and score the part that I'm about to glue, because again, I save these masters. And so I basically break open the part, so it's a lot easier to demold if this isn't permanently affixed to this. If I super glue it, I basically run the risk of snapping this, but if I hot glue it, then there's no risk of that. But with hot glue, I need to kind of rough up the surface a little bit, so I'll go ahead and rough that up. Man, it's been a while since I've done this. So I'll just go ahead and hold that for a second. Yeah, hobby knife number 7 or 8. So now there's a few things I can do. Here you have a bead of glue that's all the way around the outside of this guy that you can't see because my lighting is horrible. But there's a bead of hot glue around the entire side. I could leave that because again, it's in a place that it's not going to affect anything. But at the same time, if I don't clean it up now, I'm gonna have to clean it up for every single part that comes off of this thing, and that can be very annoying. So any Any cleanup now in the master will make your life a lot easier in the future. Make sure I don't slice my finger off because this is my sharp one. If any of my other ones slip, it's not that big of a deal. If this one slips, I go through my finger. And there you go. So it's pretty much going to be standing like that. And this is far too long for what I'm going to be doing, but I can always cut that short. Generally, I don't cut the well until after I've done it. Sometimes I'll mold the. You can't just have a stick. You need some sort of funnel, not just to pour and make the pour easier, but you need some sort of reservoir up here, because if there's no reservoir, it can actually shrink down and then go into your part surprisingly quickly. So you need some sort of reservoir up here. Usually I just cut a block into it up here. Usually I cut those after, so if I leave a little bit of room, then yeah, but this is still a little bit long. I can cut it down just a little bit here. Not to mention I need to get it flatter. So I'm going to do that on the edge of my table because I already have this thing in there, so I don't want to screw it up. Let me make sure I'm actually cutting this correctly. Where would that go? That might be wrong. Not 100% sure. Oh, I got it right-ish. Let's see. How do I want to adjust that? That's good enough. Well, I can do better. That was way too much. No, it's fine. Just making sure that sits relatively correctly. So now that we have this, we're gonna need to actually make the base plate. Usually I use foam core. God dang, this stuff has gotten more expensive over the years. When I first started using this stuff, it was like 50 cents a board, maybe. Usually I get white. This is what I could find that I still had laying around. Usually this stuff was like 50 cents for a big board or whatever. I think it was like a 30 by 40 inch. Now these things are like dollars. These things are like $2 or $3 a piece. It's freaking ridiculous. And at Walmart, God forbid you try to get this at Walmart. At Walmart, this is like 10 bucks for two. It's ridiculous. Also, probably dulling the shit out of my knife, because I'm just going straight on wood right now because I don't care. And I don't have my proper cutting board behind it. So I'm probably scarring the shit out of this, but more importantly, I'm dulling the crap out of this knife. Let's see. Please don't slice your fingers. Shove one. Carbon fiber handles, stainless steel blade, diamond. No, it's just the adjustment back here instead of up here at the front. So sometimes when you cut with this one, you'll like loosen it and you have to retighten it again, and that's really annoying. Since this one's back here, you never have to worry about that. You can turn in any direction you want. It's nice. Now it's like $4 a board. That's ridiculous. Dollar Tree has them cheap. I don't really like the Dollar Tree, like the cheaper stuff. If you don't go to like a proper craft store, these tend to get squished a lot, and then it's like weird. So platform isn't super flat, but that's all right. And we're just going to go ahead and glue this. Any vents I usually cut afterwards. so it's not that big of a deal. You can use like toothpicks or whatever, and you can get like a really, really fine point up here if you super glue a toothpick point to the end of something, and then just you have to be very careful with it because it's very easy to snap off. But if you can do it right, you can get the vent where you want it to, but I don't really care. Not looking to make a fancy thing right now. I used a lot of hot glue. I didn't need to use this much, but I don't care. So this is a balance of being economical about it, because if I go at too harsh of an angle, I can actually end up wasting silicone. But at the same time, I don't want to get the angle wrong, because that would be bad. And I'm looking at a few different things. I'm seeing where some bubbles can potentially form, and I'm trying to avoid screwing up the face of the trigger right up in this hook right here, because that's going to be the best spot for resin to bubble there, but it should be fine. I was about to comment on part angle. Yeah, it just depends on the part. You have to think of the, as I float around, you have to think about the fluid dynamics in two different directions. One for when you're pouring the silicone, and then the opposite direction for when you're pouring the resin into the silicone. So it's a little bit complicated when you're first starting out, but the more you do it, the more it's easier to see. So now I have quite a bit of a blob of hot glue here, so this is gonna take a second. One thing that you can do to speed this up, if you're impatient, is you can take the end of your any sort of metal, and you can hold on there for a second, and it will act as a heat sink. And then that will speed up the process quite a bit. So I want to double check my angles here. Again, the point that I'm talking about where I'm more likely to form a bubble is actually right in this underhang right here. So when this is upside down and the resin's pouring in this way, this doesn't look like that sharp of an angle, but when you're talking about liquid resin, it's a lot stickier than water is. That's why I don't like people, oh, that's like pouring water. No, it's not like pouring water, because the viscosity is different. The surface tension is a lot different. Water would not pool right here, but you might actually get a little bubble right here because it's going to push, and then it might catch something, and if you don't pour it right, if resin gets on top of it, then it's going to leave a little bubble right here. Now for me, it doesn't matter that much because I'm pressure casting this, but even then, if this entire, God forbid, this entire thing became a bubble, it wouldn't. But if this entire thing became a bubble, it would shrink, but it wouldn't disappear completely. And that's kind of the difference there. So there's also going to be a vent, because pouring down this thin shaft is going to be impossibly difficult. I should say impossibly slow. So there'll be a vent right here. I need one anyway, but there'll be a vent right here. It's going to branch off from this one, so it'll be a little Y piece here to here, and then that will go to the surface. So when I'm pouring from here, I'll make sure not to cover up that vent, and then that should help it pour a little bit easier. These slopes are the worst, because you can't just put a vent right here, because you will need to put one here, and then right here, and then right here, and it's just going to be a mess. And especially this is an open area. This is where you're fitting your finger, right? So you don't want to have to clean up every single time you do that. So like if it's flat, like if I was pouring down from this way, it'd just be flat right here, then the bubble could be anywhere in there, and you'd have to vent the entire thing, and you don't want to do that. Here fluid dynamics, you get flashbacks. Just remember, one is like a shim and the other is like molten candy. Oh, one is like slime. I don't know why I said slime. Shim. Jeez. Hey, Ranger, what's going on, man? So I'm a little off center here, but it doesn't matter. That was pretty much it. It doesn't look like much, but if you're starting out and you're working on your own piece, this can be very daunting because you have to think of so many different things. I'm used to it, so I'm kind of making it look easy. But if you're good at figuring out these puzzles, then it's really not going to be that bad. The only thing is you're going to be wasting a lot of money if you get this wrong. So working on something small like this would be a good first project. This is a really simple one, but it's not without its complications. You're not just casting a stick. It actually has some dimensions to it, so it could be fun. So we're gonna see what box I can get out of this for the least amount of dimensions, and I can already kind of see where I'm going with this. So one thing about making your box, you can do a whole bunch of different shapes. You're not limited to just a plain old rectangle, but I generally do, mainly because in my experience, if you're trying to save every scrap of silicone that you can, and if you're like, well, I can save some here, and if I hug this, and if I do this, I can save some here and there. If you do that, you're gonna end up fucking up your part, or at the very least, it's not gonna be nearly as good as if you just said, screw it, I'm just doing as much as I need to. Generally, a good rule of thumb when you're doing this, if you're trying to save every little scrap that you can, you're probably going to lose some quality there. Just my experience. Don't have to follow it, but in the years that I've done this, that's how it's gone. So that's just kind of how I've always done it. Looks like I can get away with I could probably get away with less. I was gonna say 2 inches this way. I could actually probably get away with far less. I might be able to get away with 1.5 inches, but 1.75 inches. I'm comfortable with 1.75 inches there. Do casting a shadow looks easy enough? Yeah, sorry. The light's only from this way, so you'll definitely see a lot of shadows. And then coming from this way, I'll need a little bit more. Also, the mold is going to be split probably this way. Maybe I should split this way. That way I won't need any cleanup. If I can split it from the back, I won't need to touch this face at all, which would be nice. But if I need to vent that, then I'm going to be shit out of luck. What to do? I'm just going to cut it open from this side. It'll be a little bit of cleanup, but if I need to cut a vent right here, on the off chance that wasn't sharp enough, it's going to be a pain. Well, the vents might be better from this side. Make up your mind, Hawkeye. No one cares. Oh, I care. Whatever, I'll just go from the back, and then if I get something here, then I'll just be screwed. So I need enough to key in the mold here. So the way I do mine is I just cut mine open. It takes a lot of force with this hand. It's very tough to pry it open, and then you have to be very gentle with this hand. So it's a big contrast, and it takes a couple minutes, so your forearm cramps up and stuff, but gets the job done. So basically when I'm cutting it open, I'll start by cutting open a wave so that it keys in this way, and then I'll come back in and then cut it this way so that it's also not only keyed in this way, but it's also keyed in this way so that it's not moving. It's relatively simple to do, but it just takes a little bit of practice. So I'll start at the base, and then I'll remember where the part is, and I'll just follow up this line, and when I get to the actual part, I'll smooth out the waves into more of one line, and then I'll have that line be as straight and as clean as I can and as direct as I can. So the silicone walls here, you don't really want to cut it like this because then you just have a flap of silicone. You want to keep that as perpendicular as you can. So Ben is similar to molten hard candy. It wasn't too far off. Usually it's not that viscous, but I mean, so anyway, maybe 3 inches. I don't need much on this side because I'm not cutting open this side. I'm just gonna do a one seam thing. Usually I split them on both sides and just have a clamshell, but this is a small and simple enough part where I don't feel the need to do that, so I'm probably just going to have less on this side. I don't even need to cut it all the way. I can like stop right here because I can stop like right here cutting it, so I can just pull the rest of it out. So I'm probably gonna do like 3 inches this way. It is actually getting close to the edge right here, but it should be fine. So that's 3 inches on this side. God only knows if not right there. God only knows if that's going to be enough. I might actually need to glue another board onto this side here. Whoops, because I don't feel like redoing this. Oh, you know what? I can just cut off this side. This is going to be the stupidest thing I've ever done. Let's make sure I'm not... Oh, you know what? I can just cut off the corner. So stupid. There. Won't run out of room now. Not very professional of me. It's also pretty important that these molds are very sealed up. I'm probably gluing this to the table. I'll just keep it moving. It's very important to note that these things are sealed up properly, because if you have a silicone leak, that's almost game over. I have sealed them up before. It takes a little bit of fast thinking, but it's generally a really bad thing if these things start leaking. It's a Superman logo. Oh yeah. Okay. And then the last dimension is going to be our height here. And that's pretty simple. So we could do 3 inches. That's a 3-inch mark right here. That's looking a little bit close. Maybe 3 1/4. Let's go 3 1/4. And this is what I'm talking about, where I really could get away with 3 inches here. But if I just go for the 3 1/4, I mean, how much is that really wasting? And I'm doing the mold properly. When you try to save as much as you can, you might actually end up just wasting the entire batch instead of saving, you know, that little bit. So yeah, so the height is going to be 3 1/4, and then that's going to be 1 2 5, and then that's going to be 3. So we're just going to do the math on that real quick. And this is just volume, of course. Whoops. If I could type in my calculator correctly. So the volume on that's actually pretty... Alright, volume on that's actually pretty small. Get a 12.1875. That's in cubic inches. Cubic inches. And so we need to take that number and we're going to divide it by a certain number that's related to the weight of the silicone in inches, in cubic inches. So I think the silicone is, it doesn't have to be super exact, but I think it's something like 23.5, 23.6. We'll just take the bigger number, which isn't by much. That's 0.518, and then this is 0.516. Not that big of a difference, but we'll just take the bigger number because why not? And so we need a little over half a pound of silicone for this guy right here. Quebec engine, yeah. So 0.518. We'll just round that up and 0.52. So we'll do I actually have a calculator on my phone here, but I usually just Google it. 0.52 pounds to grams, and that's 235-ish. And so I could just write down 235, but realistically, when I'm mixing it and you pour it out, there's going to be a lot left in the container itself. You're going to take out some when on your mixing stick, and usually, depending on the size of your bowl and stuff, you usually lose around 50-ish grams, 100 if you're being lazy. So instead of 235, I'm just going to do like 275, maybe even 300. I'm just going to go straight for 300 because why not? It's a nice even number. Nice easy way to measure it out. So that'll be split up. If your silicone is 1 and 1 by weight, make sure it's by weight, because oftentimes they're like, oh, this is by volume, so it's super easy. Weight is always a lot more accurate, especially for the smaller amounts. You always want to do weight. But if it's not a 1-to-1, if the parts are equal, 1 and 1 by volume, but if you look at one and it says a certain weight on it, and then you look at the other and it says a different weight on it, that can actually tell you the ratio that you have there, so you can just do a little bit of math. I'm not actually sure what mine is because I'm using a different silicone than I normally do because it's just what I have left over. I'm not even sure if this is still good, which is why I'm doing the small one first, because I'm not sure if my silicone is still good. But we shall find out, I guess. So assuming that this is a 1-to-1 by weight, it's going to be 150 grams of each part. And then I'll just go ahead and mix that up and do this. But until that, I need to actually make these walls now. So I have the dimensions. And now I don't have the straight edge that I normally have, but I do have a straight edge. So I guess we'll see how this works out. I always try to use the stock cut on this thing so that I'm as straight as I can be. So let's see, 1.25 was one of the dimensions and 3 was another dimension. So let's see, 6, 7, 8.5. So as long as this is 8.5 inches long, I'll be fine, and this is way more than 8.5 inches long, so that should be good. Try to move some of this stuff out of the way. Try not to glue this to the table. And the height is going to be 3.25 inches, so I'll go 1 inch above that for some of the gaps. So instead of 3.25, I'll go to 4.25. And let's go ahead and poke a hole. Check the distance. It's about here. And then go to another 4.25. And now I have 2 points of reference. This is a lot thinner of a ruler than I'm used to, so I'll try not to slice my fingers off too bad. Slips, cuts off finger, end of stream. I don't need this entire piece, but I might as well keep going because I'm like right there. Sharper knife always helps when you're doing this. If you try to use a dull one, it's just annoying. Okay, so this edge actually isn't that straight. It looks like I've cut into it before. So I'm actually going to stick with this side, which is a nice straight. This is the factory cut. So go ahead and line my ruler up the top here. And we'll go ahead and make our marks. We're not going to poke all the way through. That's rather important. 1 1/4, right? Yeah, 1 1/4. Oh shit, you know what? I made that 1/8 inch too small. It's not a big deal, but it is 1/8 of an inch too small. Then again, did I measure it? Maybe I meant 1 1/8. Hold on. Oh, that's 7/5. I'm so stupid. I'm so stupid. It's okay because we have enough. But I am stupid. No one said anything. That's okay. It's supposed to be much bigger than that. I was wondering why that looks so weird. I was like, man, I'm getting away with murder here. So I did all of that wrong. It's supposed to be 175. I just have awful handwriting. I'm going to fix this over here so that I'm not looking back at this incorrectly. $175 times 3 times 3.25. Okay, and then divide that by, whoops, 23.5. Okay, and then we'll put that into our converter. What was that, 0.726 pounds into grams? It's 330, so 400. And that's why you always measure twice, people. Measure twice, cut once. So, luckily we still have enough here. 175. We'll make a little mark here. Not going to go all the way through. And then the next wall is going to be 3 inches, so we'll go 3 inches from this. 1, 2, 3. And then the 175 again. So we'll go 175. And I'm pretty sure we just need the 3 marks, because the last one's going to be just the straight. And then we'll come to this side and do the same thing. Start again with 175. 1, 2, 3. 1, 7, 5. And there we go. And again, I don't want to punch all the way through this because we're just bending this. There's a million ways to make molds. You can look it up. This is just how I've always done mine. This is how I've found it to be the easiest to do it for me. But there are 1,000 ways to do this. You can make these walls out of almost anything. You can even make them out of wood. Just seal up the wood with some Vaseline. You actually don't have to, but it sticks a little bit to the wood if you're not careful. The Vaseline just helps. Okay. And then I'll go ahead and flip this over and make one last notation on this side. So we have, what is that? Hold on. Having a brain aneurysm. It's 9.5. So go ahead and on the other side of this, make a little dot at 9.5. And then again, 9.5 here. And then basically, if I can reach it, measure twice, cut three times. Yeah, pretty much. Sorry, problems with Wi-Fi. Measure twice, cut your finger off. Back, but still mowing. Okay, so we got our lines here. This is black, so it's a little bit harder to see. I did not do something right. Oh, I made my first mark at 9 because I'm stupid. I said 9.5 and made it at 9. Can you tell it's been a minute since I've done this? Been probably a couple of years at this point. Or at least a year. It's black, so it's harder to see, but you can still see it. Now, take that and fold these. And then that goes on the inner side here. You see that line? And we'll make it like that. And then the rest of this is just scrap. We can cut it off any old way. Okay. And we got our lines relatively straight because when we put this together, it's not crooked. And what I mean by that is if you don't cut them very straight, it can be like off like that. You can kind of force it, but it's kind of crappy. But this one's pretty straight, so. You do want to make sure you get plenty of glue on here because you don't want these seams to leak. We'll go back over it just in case anyway, but it's pretty vital that these things don't leak. Make sure the top and bottom are both lined up. Because again, if you cut it crooked, then you might not necessarily want to line up. Huzzah! Box, indeed. Riveting entertainment. Now, what's more entertaining, this or sanding? It's got to be the sanding, right? Okay. A box. Now we'll go ahead and take our piece. Again, this isn't exactly great for camera because it's black and it's harder to see than if I were to do this in white. But and then just kind of visualize where you want this. I'll do this a little bit better on my own here in a second. But now you got a box there. So basically you just want to look down and make sure you're not only getting this centered where you want, but also make sure that you're getting the best turnaround here, because who knows, you might actually make the box and then realize, oh, instead of like this, it actually makes more sense to do it like this. So, which is actually where I'm getting to. And I could actually make this a lot thinner. I could actually make this thinner this way, but I'm not going to bother because the thicker will just mean that it's more durable. A little bit, not much. Hold its shape better. But number one, I'm too lazy to cut another box. And number two, I just want to see if this silicone is good at all. And I'm not looking to save a whole lot of silicone, so I think right about here is good. So now that I have this, I'll go ahead and take a Sharpie and outline the entire thing. And I outline everything because the more I have outlined, the more accurate I can be when placing this back. So I have an exact outline of where this needs to be. And if you can see we didn't actually even need this. So it might look weird when you have it without the box on. It might not look like it's centered, but when you actually hold it up like this, it's actually pretty centered. So just shows how your perceptive can change. So before I glue this down, I forgot to do this because, again, I haven't done this in forever. I'm going to go ahead and measure this. I think I actually made it 1/8 of an inch too short, and I did. So it's 7/8 down instead of 1 inch, but that's okay. So I basically want to... ideally, this would have been open, and I would have done this, but basically I'm just going to mark with a pencil or something where the silicone should stop. So when I'm pouring it, I know when I've gone past that line. You can go past it as much as you want, but you just don't want to go underneath it. Again, this would have been 150 times easier if I did this properly, but I'm stupid, so I can't even tell where I freaking marked this. Did I even mark it? Not really. Excellent. I don't think this is gonna work. Really should have done this properly. Maybe if I have more height here, I can see it a little bit better. It's gonna be more of a guess. So you probably can't see that. Oh no, you can see it. But I'll just use that as a reference. Maybe I'll actually go back over it with Sharpie. Like if this part doesn't cure, I can just cut off the chunk. It's not that big of a deal. But it is worth noting I've never used silver Sharpie with silicone before. Cool. So yeah, now I have that reference line on the inside, and I'll just make my day a little bit easier when I'm actually going to do it. Would have made my day a lot easier if I had done that from the beginning, but whatever. So now I'll take our hot glue. Make sure you have plenty of hot glue in there. It sucks when you run out in the middle of trying to be quick about it. Oh god. That almost just dripped on me. Blocked your view a little bit there, but that's okay. Here we go. Hawkeye is the hipster of resin casting parts. He was doing it before it was cool. Hipster 007. You guys are hilarious. Remove the added foam. Bring back Superman mold. Everyone is sanding these days. Even Wacom is doing it, but resin molding construction is unique. There's plenty of videos of the back of my head, trust me. So now that it's actually together, I'm just going to double check all my angles and make sure that I'm happy with everything. Everything looks fine. So I'm relatively certain that everything is sealed, but just because I have had a few, it's not very common. Like I can think of 2 different times it's actually happened, but when it does leak, it is one of the worst feelings in the world, because it doesn't just leak a little bit and then stop. This thing takes 4 hours to cure. So it leaks and leaks and leaks, and you'll lose your entire mold if you don't address it. And so you're panicking trying to cover this thing up in that place. But it's silicone, so once it starts leaking, that's it. That's where that is. So if you don't stop that in its tracks, you can't actually stop it because no glue will stick to it. So I've actually made like a net before in silicone or in hot glue, and then just like locked it in, so it was like a little puddle of silicone behind a wall of super glue. It's a very panicky moment, and it's not fun. Hey man, what's going on? So to not do that, basically I'm just going to go over all of these lines and just double check to make sure everything is in place, and even up these walls. There's pretty much no chance that I've cut into it because I didn't feel it cut into it, but it doesn't hurt. What am I wasting? A few millimeters of, more than a few millimeters, a few centimeters of hot glue. But if it's a potential in saving a couple 100 grams of silicone, it's much better. Don't be stingy if anyone ever decides to do this. It's just more of a headache than it's worth. You don't want to be wasteful, but at the same time, you know. Okay, and that's ready to go. You don't have to use any sort of release when it's just like this. You can, but I really don't find it necessary. What you might want to do is take a picture of it, so that you remember how you've angled everything. I think I'll be fine, but yeah. And then so I'll pour the silicone. I'll let that cure, because I don't know if I'm actually going to make another video doing this. I might. Who knows? It just depends on the day if I have time. But just in case, I'll go over the whole thing. Pour the silicone, wait for that to cure. Excuse me. Let me go over everything. I'll mix the silicone. I don't really care about introducing bubbles because I have a degasser as well. So mix it up. Then it's a 40-minute pot life, the one I use, and then it has a 4-hour cure time, and that lets me degas it properly. You don't need to degas these, but since I'm pressure casting these, it's a very good idea to degas them, because any little air bubbles in your silicone, when you pressurize it, it'll shrink those little bubbles, and if you have enough of them, it's actually going to distort your mold. So the proper way to do it is to degas it. So it's literally just a vacuum chamber, and then you pull all the air out. It'll foam up a little bit, it'll bubble up. So you want to have a taller container, and usually you want to have it quite a bit taller than the container, because it will actually rise quite a bit on you. And then you leave that. I leave mine for about 10 minutes is usually how long I leave that to degas, and then I'll come back, open it up. I can't stand when people pour, like, you can tell the people that pick this up during the trend and the people who actually like doing this in all those YouTube videos, in any sort of pouring or whatever. You can tell the people who know what they're doing versus the people who don't by the way they pour alone. Usually you see a YouTube Facebook video and they pour and then they start going all over the place. That's the worst thing you can do for bubbles, because they're going to be everywhere. You're introducing bubbles. There's no point. You go into the corner off of your part and you pour into the side of it, and you just stand there in that one spot and you pour until it fills up. That's the proper way to do it. As soon as you start pouring all over your part and stuff, you're just introducing bubbles, and there's no point. Rant over. It's not really that big of a deal, but you know. So there is underhangs there. So the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to pour it like this, and then I'll wait till it goes up, and then I'll let it sit back down like this. Maybe even come this way a little bit. Making sure that the silicone isn't leaving the part. It's not going to uncover the bottom again. And then I'll continue to pour it the rest of the way. After that cures, I'll go ahead and take all of the foam core off, and then I'll cut notches into the side. I literally just take chunks out of the corners. So I'll do in a certain way so that you can't mix match the different sides. Then I will cut a strip of foam core, and I'll measure it out properly. You actually want to measure the silicone itself, not just take your measurements, but you actually want to take the measurements from the silicone itself. Cut one that wraps all the way around this way, and then you'll stand it up like this, and make sure everything is sealed properly. What you can actually do is run silicone. You can run hot glue all the way around your borders if you're not super confident in your seal there, because it's very bad if it starts leaking. It's not as bad as the silicone leaking, but it's still pretty bad, because you don't need it to seal for very long. I use 65D for my mother molds, and the mother mold is basically just a fancy way of saying the hard parts that hold the silicone together when your part's not in there. And then I'll pour about a 1/2 inch layer. I'll do the math for about a 1/2 inch layer of resin, and that will cure in about 2 minutes from me pouring it. So it's super fast. You can watch it turn from clear to white. It's pretty cool. And then I'll flip it over after 30 minutes and do the same thing on the other side. And then once that's done, I'll peel everything off, peel the mother molds apart, and then I'll start cutting it. And that's about it for actually doing this. And man, I am not used to talking this much anymore. How dare you waste hot glue? You have too many tools. Huh. You haven't seen anything. Have you ever done sand casting? No, it's something I would like to do, but I've just never had the equipment. I already felt bad enough. I don't live at home anymore. I live in an apartment. But I used to live with my parents when I was doing this, and I already felt bad enough having this stuff around, let alone making a forge and doing this crap in the garage. So I didn't want to do that. But it is something that I've wanted to do. Maybe when I get my own place. But there's not a whole lot I can do in this environment, in terms of both the way I'm set up and like actually modifying the way I want to. Like my bandsaw, drill press, even my belt sander and everything that I don't use too much. That was all in my closet at my parents' house. It wasn't a big closet. It was like 5 feet by 5.5 feet or something like that. Really small closet. But I built a huge workbench in there, and it was basically half the room was a workbench. And, that's what worked. It was far enough in the corner of the building where no one heard me working when I had all the doors closed. And I picked up after myself. I didn't let it leave that room. So, but with the apartment, it's kind of like, where do I put that stuff? Not only do I have my stuff, but I have my fiance's stuff in here as well, and I don't want to bother her. It's literally one big room, and then you have the bedroom and the Am I lagging here? YouTube just went off. Oh no, I'm back. Did I interrupt at all? Or YouTube kind of like was doing the loading thing for a second. Anyway, but it's basically one big room, one big living room, and then you have the bedroom and the bathroom. Like that's all the rooms. So I don't want to bother her by pulling out all this crap and having a bandsaw going. Not to mention my neighbors. I found a really quiet compressor. This is my compressor noise. And that's actually really, really quiet. You can tell just from me talking that it's really not that loud. It's just a little half gallon, no, it's a full gallon. It's just a little gallon compressor. But It's really nice to have, actually. I'm really glad I got this thing. It was one of the only tools that I was still borrowing from my dad was his compressor. Obviously, he has like a huge compressor, and this is just a small gallon one. But for what I'm doing right now, it's fine. And then if I need a bigger air compressor, I just have my pressure vessel and stuff at work, and I can just do it there. So I'm gonna do all this silicone pouring and stuff at work, so I can use their airline. But anyway, so this is this part done, I guess. Um, yeah, this is nothing new for me, but I've never shown this online before anywhere, like at all. I think like one person I've even shown a picture to online. That might be Searing Phoenix, but I'm not 100% sure. I don't remember, but yeah, this is or at least was privileged information. So I don't really care about. Whoa, I don't really care about making money off it anymore. So maybe this will help. One person who's been interested in this. It's really expensive to get into. It's horrible when you make mistakes. It takes a lot of gonads to take a go at this, especially for bigger projects. My first project was like $650, and luckily I didn't mess that up. But if I did, it was stress-inducing the entire time. If I did mess that up, there was no trying again. And realistically, I'm going to be spending a couple $100s on these molds, and I'm not going to be selling them. I'm not making any money off of them. So it's kind of hard to justify. If you're making them for other people, then it's a little bit easier to justify. I didn't even sell that many of these hand grips. But realistically, all of the money is in the silicone. This is probably going to be a $50, $60 mold, maybe even all the way up to 100 if I'm not careful. And it's just a trigger. But then again, when I start casting these, how much is this trigger costing me? So these handles, without the glow-in-the-dark powder, because the powder, this is actually like legitimately like $30 or $40 worth of powder in this stupid thing. But without the glow-in-the-dark powder, these handle scales, they're a lot of resin. These are like the biggest thing I have besides the Rapid Strike parts, the front of the Rapid Strike parts. But even then, this is like a little over $1 worth of resin, maybe. So now to say that this cost me $1 to make is definitely not fair, because how much did this thing? This took almost a half gallon of silicone to make. So you can kind of do the math on that. But if you can justify making these, it's really cool. It's really fun to make. It's really satisfying to make your own little parts here, and you don't have to worry about the paint chipping off. Is it UV reactive or something else? It's UV reactive, but it's glow in the dark. So if I shine this in the light over here for a second, I don't know if this is going to show up on camera, but we'll try. Should have bought those grips when I had the chance. These were not up for very long. These were only up for a couple months before I stopped selling them, because the mold is extremely expensive. It's definitely one of the more expensive molds that I've made. The Rapid Strike one is the only one that's more expensive than this. The Rapid Strike was stupid. That took a full gallon of silicone to do. Just the front. And then... oh, you can actually see it with the light on. So this is the difference between the glow-in-the-dark powder that you get off Amazon and like actual glow-in-the-dark powder that's meant for professionals. If you, Big Zen Z actually has a really good video way back on his Instagram, like way back, of him having it outside. Having it outside charges it way more than anything else, by the way. Like even a UV light doesn't charge it nearly as much as having it outside. But like he has it outside, and then he brings it inside, and even though it's still light out, it's glowing like pretty fiercely, and that is actually a really good representation of it in real life. It's actually a little bit duller in the video than it is right now, but the stuff glows pretty fierce. It's a little bit more green tinged in real life. It's more of a teal. Yeah, it's a lot more of a teal. I would compare it to the LEDs on Glass Construct, where all of them look more blue, but then if I put a picture of it next to Ethereal Fortress, then it looks a little bit more green. Then why don't they cost $1? Yeah, because I would never be able to do the silicone molds. You can only get so many out of them. A Rep Strike took that much, dear lord. Well, the parts are big. Bravo 6 going dark. Anyway. So, these ones, this is going to take a lot. This is probably going to take a full trial kit. If I'm lucky. I really don't want to have to get 2 trial kits. I really don't have the money for a full gallon kit right now, unfortunately, but hopefully I can get away with just using a full trial size. I was going to cut this in half and then have this front piece just glue on to the back pieces, so if I had one like this, just a regular one, then I'd cut it up here and I'd just you know, make it nice or whatever, and then I would take the molded front half of this and then just glue it on to the back half of this, and that would make the mold a lot cheaper, because it would be turning this into this. That's cutting off a lot, but I don't know, I might just do the whole thing. It's kind of thin walled and it's very long. This is kind of a saving grace here, but I might make a bigger hole up here so that it doesn't noodle. Because if you have 2 long pieces of silicone on the inside of this, it's just gonna do this. It's not gonna want to line up properly. But we'll see. I haven't thought this one all the way through yet, which is why I'm not too worried about it right now, but we'll see. So I was going to do some prepping on this. I was gonna try to fill up some in here and stuff. Been going for an hour and 22, almost 23 minutes. But I don't know, I'm feeling a little bit lazy on this. I might just save this for another day. Yeah, I think I'm gonna save this for another day. I don't feel like doing that right now. Don't know if I'm gonna do the don't know if I'm gonna do a live stream on this one, because I actually have to pay attention to this one. This one I don't give a shit because it's a super easy part. But this one I might actually have to stop and think a little bit, so that I'm not screwing this up, because I've never done it's complicated. I've done more complicated parts, but I've never done one in this complication. It's a different kind of complicated. So I just want to make sure everything is gonna be fine here. No idea if this one's gonna work out. I really hope it does. But I guess we'll find out. So that's we're probably gonna wrap it up here. If you guys have any questions or comments or anything about any of my processes that I do that I've never really revealed before, go ahead and leave that comment now, and I'll see if I can get around to answering it. Greetings, the infamous Hawkeye. Hey, what's going on, man? Catching the back end of the stream here, but that's okay. Nothing wrong with that. Gonna be wrapping up here. Did a little bit of sanding on this guy. I've been live streaming on Wacom's Discord server every now and again. They have a streaming feature when you're in chat, so I was doing some of this, but I've been sanding this a little bit. And I do use the Dremel because hand sanding, you get you get really smooth, but you can round over corners that you don't want to round over and different stuff like that, even using blocks and stuff. And just to get the shapes and stuff I want, it really is just carving. So I've been using the Dremel and stuff a lot for this guy, because I don't necessarily want just rounded off. I want to actually carve this thing into a certain shape. So, and then there's also going to be glow-in-the-dark resin poured on the inside of these. So all this black is raised up, but it's been nice and blended in a little bit. So glow-in-the-dark handle. The handle scales here where they separate. These lines right here, they're raised up. This right here, and then this pommel right here, it's just going to get a misting of gray, the same gray that I'm going to do for all of the metal parts, but it won't have any clear coat or anything, so that it can still get the UV light and glow. So UV, or excuse me, glow in the dark. There's another one on the other side that I still need to raise up. And then the trigger, glow in the dark as well, glow in the dark hammer, and then this guy will be glow in the dark, and you can actually see the rim of it, which will be really cool. But then when you start looking down the barrel, that's when you're going to notice it. So hopefully that will be pretty decent. How does one sharpen a file? I never saw that before. You're not actually sharpening it. You can get it to feel a lot more sharp if you clean it as you're going. As far as I know, there's no way to sharpen files. Once it's dull, it's trash. But you take a wire brush. I don't have one right here, but you can just get a cheap little brass wire brush. Make sure it's not steel, please. Make sure it's a brass one. You want something softer than what you're using. I don't think the steel one would hurt a proper file, but it's more harsh on the file than it needs to be. Anyway, just a brass, and then you go with the grain, and it will clean up your file immediately, and it will feel 100 times sharper. And if you just clean that as it goes, especially when you're using it on like epoxy or something like that, you do a few scrapes and then it's full of epoxy dust, and because it's just so fine of a dust, and it feels like it's really dull. If you just keep cleaning it, then it will feel a lot sharper. Just got done mowing. I think my mower may be broken. That's not great. Sorry I didn't talk much. So what's going on? We're wrapping up. I'm just taking questions. Thank you for tuning in. I appreciate it. Hope your lawnmower's okay. I bought all the parts I needed to build the 2S Strife, but I bought a battery without an XT60 connector. Ooh, rough. I mean, you could just use vinyl dye. That's not how you spell it. Use vinyl dye black on it. Yeah, I definitely don't use any of the vinyl dyes. They're still getting recommended, by the way. Vinyl dye. Like, if you look on Cosmetic Nerfers Welcome, just join that, by the way. They're still recommending vinyl dye, which is just crazy to me. I thought we got past that a long time ago. That's like 2013 stuff. So I'm not sure why that's still being recommended. Vinyl dye is not a dye. It's not even called dye. It's a vinyl paint. It's a little bit flexible. It's super thin, but it's not a primer, people. Please use a proper paint. Thoughts on Drax Resin Talon Claw? Or should I ask another time? Hate autocorrect. Are you serious, bro? I think it's pretty useless. No offense to anything he's doing. I think it's great innovation. It's one of those things that needed to be tried. He's right. No one's done it because everyone's like, this isn't gonna work, and he's absolutely right. It just needs to be tried. But for him to say, I sort of skimmed through the last video that he did of it. Didn't watch too much of it, but I skimmed through it. I think I left a comment on there. Realistically, realistically, it's not viable. It's just brittle. Like, he dropped one of the parts, he said, I think, and it shattered or it broke or it cracked or something. And just the fact that he dropped it and it cracked if you put any sort of stress on that, it's not going to work. That alone should have been the key to that. What would have been better is if he resin printed them the way he did, and instead of putting it together, he should have had that molded up in proper silicone molds. And now he can, it's going to be several $100s to mold that thing. Hundreds and hundreds of dollars to mold that thing. But how much resin is he using right now? Remember, that resin that he's using is like $150 for like a small bottle of it. That stuff is not cheap. And so if you make a bunch of molds, all of a sudden you can make 10 Talon claws for the price of one. And that's not an exaggeration. Once you get those molds, you can get 30 Talon claws out of those molds before you need to replace them. And not to mention, this resin is a lot more durable. It's proper setting resin rather than UV curing resin. And it's a completely different ball game. So even like just a simple resin like this, it would make a usable Talon claw. And I would love to do something like that, but I just don't have the money to invest in the resin printing, or the silicone for that matter anymore. Although, to be fair, I could absolutely justify I wouldn't, because I'm not in the game anymore, but I could absolutely justify buying that kind of silicone and that kind of stuff for that, because people would buy them. So, and even selling them, as much as his 3D printed stuff, $500 a pop, that would still be making a profit on them. So if I casted, if you cast 10 of those alone and then sell them for $500, you're making $5,000, and it's definitely not going to cost $5,000 to mold those things. So, and I'm sure you could get a lot more than 500 out of them. I mean, who's doing that? Looks cool as is. It has post-apocalyptic look. I bet it will look clean and really cool. P.S. I think the mower may be okay. Well, that's good. Yeah, it's gonna be bone flavored. So it's mostly gonna be like an off-white, and then I'll put a wash over it, like a tan wash and maybe some browns. And then like these smoother parts are gonna be metal, so they'll be like dark gray. These parts up here are gonna be dark gray. Pretty sure this is gonna be metal. Haven't super made up my mind in this area yet, but and then this will all be that. So yeah, hopefully it'll be cool. And then I have the holster magnets on both sides, so I have a set here, and then I took them off, but they're over there. But I have another set right here, so that I can not only put it on my thigh, but I can put it how I'm gonna store it on my on the small of my back. And so you can do either or. New project, pickpocket. Ever think you'll sell sell things again? No, I'm pretty much done. The only thing I really got out of it was the enjoyment of it. It was making enough money where I was making money, but it wasn't making enough money consistently to do anything with. So, I mean, there's not much to it. Not to mention the community has kind of gotten pretty toxic, especially to anyone who has strong opinions. I'm not really liked in the community anymore, so that's okay. I like me. I'm liked locally, so as long as I'm liked by my locals, that's all I really give a shit about. I'm not dealing with those other people. Work calls, y'all. I'm an essential worker, sadly. Bye. Hey, thanks for stopping by, Ray. Jay. I saw the R in row, and then I read J, and I read it as Ray. See you, Jay. See you, thanks for coming by. Cool, sounds like a great mod. We like you. Aw, sorta. You're so sweet. I have to like you back. I appreciate that. I know you guys are kidding, but I do appreciate you guys on. I especially you. I recognize who's been here. Well, it's not that it's just because I have a different opinion, but it's I actually vocalize my opinion, and I tend to fight for my opinion probably more than I should. So it's more of how I voice my opinion rather than having a different opinion. But you know, whatever. You don't recognize me? I mean, you're just Trico now. You're just I mean, you and I talk like all the time. You're just my friend. I like opinions when they have whew, you hear my voice there? I like opinions when they have data behind them. That's another thing. Like, I have data behind a lot of my facts, but like it got to the point where I would present my data, and then people would be like, "That's not good enough. We need it done this way, this way, this way, and this way." And it's like, okay, I actually don't have time for that, and I don't care that much. So, no. And then it's like, he doesn't have any facts. Like, the funniest one I can think of is the magnet one. I don't know if anybody remembers it. I probably shouldn't bring this up again, but it's so funny now. The magnet one where they came out with monkey mods, burned that bridge. Used to be friends with monkey mods. They completely stopped talking to me after this. But the Hyperion motors that they came out with, they were like, they're neodymium. And so they sent me some, and the first thing I noticed was, oh, they're not neodymium. It's false advertising. So I went on there and I read neodymium bonded. I'd never heard of that before. So I Googled it. Turns out neodymium bonded is a completely different thing than neodymium magnets. And that's false advertising. I mean, at the time, you had like the Neo Hellcats and the Neo Rhinos that were just coming out. And so there was Neo Motors and then Neo Motors. And it was a really sneaky, shitty thing to do. And so, of course, I pointed it out. These aren't neodymium. Look, I literally had XP 180s, and they were this far apart. I slowly pushed them together, and I put something in between them because I didn't want them to smack together because they're XP 180s. But I then, like, right about here, they went, bloop, and they snapped together. I took the Hyperion motors, and I moved them closer together, and closer, and closer, and closer, and closer, and closer, and then they snapped together right about here, and it was weak. It's like, obviously, that's not the same thing. So, and that was the whole video. It literally was less than a 1 minute video on Instagram, because at this point I was already pretty much phasing out of YouTube. And then I got in a lot of trouble for that. I had to like make apologies and shit, and that was really funny. And what was even funnier is Dan from the Blaster. What's that called? The Australian guy. He runs Blaster Tech. Is that what it's called? Blaster Tech. Why can't I think of it? I can see it. Anyway, Dean over there made a video of it a week later. Literally the same video saying these aren't neodymium magnets, and that got a lot of praise. Blaster Tech. Yeah, I'm right. Thank you. And that got like a shit ton of praise, and I'm not sure why. So maybe it was just the way I worded it, but you know, whatever. It's hilarious now. I really don't hold any grudge on that, but I was definitely not happy about it at the time. It's just funny now. I'll go to the story. That was a wreck. I think I remember that video. Oh yeah, it was so much fun. Anyway. And I know these streams are like super bad for my channel or whatever, but I mean, I'm already done with YouTube. I just do YouTube because it's fun now, and I find the live streams a lot more fun with you guys, talking to you guys, being actually able to interact with you guys. Even if there's only 10 people interacting, there's 10 people watching. Even if there's only like 5-6 people interacting with me, I find that to be a lot more fun than getting thousands of views on a video. I find it a lot more rewarding. So, yeah. So that's what I'm going to continue to do. no point in doing any of this if it's no fun, right? Especially since I'm not making money off it anymore. I was never making money off of YouTube, let's be honest. I think I've made like $200 on YouTube. I've been doing this for... You can look back on my history. I've been doing YouTube a long time. That is not a lot of money. It's nothing. They came in 100 because you have to have at least $100. I don't know what it's like now, but you had to have at least $100 before it would transfer over to you. And so I've gotten 2 $100 payments from YouTube, and that's it. Oh, one of my videos just reached 100,000 views. Can you believe that? I remember when I got to meet you at End War, and it was one of the biggest highlights of the event. I really appreciate that. That means a lot. It's kind of weird that people still think of me. I mean, I guess my stuff's out there, and every now and again, I'll see a hammer shot and has my scales on it or something, and I'm like, ooh, that's weird. So I mean, I guess my stuff's out there, but I just haven't been doing anything for so long. It's weird to think about. If you go back far enough, you can find Minecraft. Yeah, I left those up on purpose. I debated for a while to take them down, and I was like, whatever, it's history. People get a kick out of it. By the way, that door, that 2x2 door is freaking terrible. Like, I can literally cut off the 2 ends. As soon as I made that video, I was like, this is stupid. I've completely screwed this up. Honestly, one of my biggest regrets. That sounds really stupid, but it's honestly one of my biggest regrets. You can just go into torches, and then the torches are on top of a block, so you're powering the block, and it turns off the torches, and then the torches are go onto another block, and then redstone above that, and then that's what controls the pistons, as opposed to going out one more and then coming up. It was stupid. The fact that I still remember it that vividly, that should tell you how much I care about that. Anyway, I used to make 3x3 doors for my friends all the time. That was fun. It's back before, I went all the way back to when Minecraft first came out on the Xbox, before it had like creative mode and stuff. Made my friends do all the hard labor for me, like digging out all of the area so I could build stuff. Good times. I always can't wait to see what you build next. You're by far the highest quality. I almost said highest quality modder in my opinion. I really appreciate that. I do my best. I can get a little bit touchy sometimes because my work is pretty much everything to me. I am not a very I try not to be a very prideful person, but all of my pride is in what I build. So since my hobby is me building stuff, and my job was nerf, I almost couldn't think of the word. A lot of my pride is shown in the hobby, which can often be mistaken for being pretty arrogant, and I definitely can be arrogant, but it's a lot easier to see in nerf because so much of my pride is in what I build. But I do hold myself to a high standard, sometimes to a fault. That last blaster really killed me. The one that we don't talk about that messed up the paint. I still think about that all the time. But I do appreciate that. That does mean a lot. Those kind of compliments, I do remember those, so I do appreciate that, Waffle. Me and my girlfriend make houses in Minecraft. I remember the first house I made in Minecraft. I don't know what happens to that world. I remember it though. It's so vivid. It's so vivid in my head. I couldn't tell you where everything was, but it's so vivid in my head. Got touchy and feels. Nerf, I think you mean Dart Soft. Honestly, the more you say Dart Soft, when I first heard it, it was awful. But the more I heard Dart Soft, Dart Soft, Dart Soft, Dart Soft, if you spend a couple minutes just talking to yourself, Dart Soft, it actually starts sounding better. And Wacom is absolutely right. It says what you need to know. It's airsoft, but with blasters, with foam blasters. And then everyone goes, oh. And it makes complete sense. He's absolutely right. I thought you were going to mention that you were a machinist again. You're hilarious. I'm a machinist. It's the I made this and this is the best. This is the best because I made it mentality. Well, not really that, but it's just like I know my stuff isn't the greatest, but I strive to be the greatest. And I don't mean that in like an arrogant way. Like I'm always looking to do better than my last project. The only one that I'm still happy with is Ethereal Fortress, and that's just because I have like an emotional attachment with that one. There's definitely things I would do better and do differently if I were to do it now, but I'm still pretty proud of that one. Pretty much everything else I can let go of if I really need to. This is the first one that I've liked this much since Ethereal Fortress. Pocket Javelin's special to me, but this is the first one since Ethereal Fortress that I'm like, I have an attachment to this one. This one I'm not getting rid of. I'm totally lost in the conversation. We did a nether brick and cyan penthouse. I want Netherbrick to come to the Xbox. I don't play Minecraft anymore, but I mean, you got to pick it up every time they have an update, right? Every time they have a big update. Does the glitch still work? Does that duping glitch still work? I have a world with a shit ton of shulker boxes because the way that last one worked is you would basically like pull something out of a chest and then it would like rip you out of the chest or something. I can't remember. Like, oh, it would piston the chest away or something. Because you could move chests with a piston now. So you'd grab it and then it would push it away, and then you would have two of the items. And we found out rather quickly that not only can you do an entire stack of something, but if you put stacks in a shulker box and then put the shulker box in there and grab the shulker box, you'll duplicate all of the items in the shulker box. So that was pretty freaking broken. So I would make like kits and stuff, like to have an entire loadout, and then just duplicate those forever. So, man, that was such a good glitch. That was so good. Anyway, you and Chris and Bobo are the best old school homemade modders. Bobo is still one of the few people that, Wacom as well, that still do like shit without 3D printing. I'm not sure who Chris is. I might just be stupid. Cyan glass. Do you do, wow, I'm having trouble. You do fine work. It is reasonable to take pride in it. Those whose opinions I give any weight to say. Thank you, I appreciate that, homely. You're too kind. Not the best. You guys are very kind. I appreciate that. Dartsoft is bad, but at least it's one. But it is. I might be having a stroke. Just kind of my take. I'm not sure I read any of that sentence correctly, because is getting blasters what let's try to do. Wow, today. Well, you'd be surprised. You'd be surprised. Some people will make something and they're like, "This is good enough," and then that's it. They've reached their apex, and you'd be surprised at how many people are okay with that, and that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But it is a pretty foreign concept for me, and if anyone who really enjoys the modding process, I complain a lot when I'm sanding and stuff, but anyone who really enjoys this process, they're always striving to do better. But sometimes people just want to mod something really quick, and that's okay too. It's just a different style, different strokes, different folks. Wow, today I learned Hawkeye was a dope glitcher. And Clowny. Yes, Clowny's a good painter. I never have been good at freehand painting. He's very good at it. Me and my friends did that glitch in our world. We did all of the duping glitches. If there was a duping glitch on Xbox, we did it at one point. Yeah, I don't know if anyone remembers the first one before they had creative mode, where you would take a furnace and you'd put the item in the furnace, and then you would have someone go in there. And how did you do that? It involved, oh no, it was super simple. It was stupid. You would put the item in the furnace, and then you would pickaxe it, but then you would switch while still holding the button, while still mining. You would switch to something else, and it would break it twice, once for your hand and once for the pickaxe, the two different timings. And then the second stack would be a glitch stack where you could just pick it up, put it in your hotbar, and then it was just an endless supply of stuff. Anyone remember that one? Aeromech, yeah, okay, that's what I thought you were talking about. I didn't want to be like Aeromech, and then have you be talking about someone else. But yes, I do know of him. I need practice. I need to practice my brass work. It takes a little bit of patience. I can never really find the right tools to work with brass, to be perfectly honest. I guess hand files and stuff, but I'm okay at working with brass. I just haven't done it a lot. The most involved one I did was Alpha Snooper. The Springer guy, Chris. Yeah, I'm assuming he's talking about Aramag. Anyway, it has been a lot of fun talking with you guys. Oh, this is how I'm gonna do my new signature from now on. It's not gonna be here. It's actually gonna be on the butt right here. But I'm basically going to, I forgot you guys are the correct direction. I'm basically going to handwrite them, and then I have some holographic stickers coming in that are clear, and it's a 1 inch by 1/2 inch, and I'm just going to put it over that, and I'll just put it someplace inconspicuous. For this one, I'm just going to do it down here because that's the most inconspicuous place I can think of. But yeah, I'm just going to do it from this way from now on because I'm trying to leave all the Black Steel Prop stuff behind. The last blaster I made under Black Steel Props was the blaster that we shall not talk about. For both the fact that I hate that blaster and for legal reasons because I don't want to get sued by a certain company based in Japan. Because I have heard rumors, but that's one of the reasons why I don't say the N word, if you know which word I'm talking about, is because like they have been known to go after people using that word, and so I just don't want anything to do with it. I don't touch it with a 10-foot pole. You guys can say it, but I won't acknowledge it. It sounds really dumb, but I've seen horror stories. Anyone on Etsy should know and should have horror stories of different franchises going after you. I had Destiny go after some coins I was making. I was making strange coins, and they sent me a cease and desist. Just reading some of these. Blaster tag sounds kind of weird to me. The more I say blaster tag, the more I don't like it. The more I say dart soft, the more I like that one. I went to... I'm just trying to look at it from like an outside perspective. Like blaster tag is a little bit confusing. Dart soft, I have something that immediately pops up into my brain. Airsoft. Airsoft with Nerf guns. I went to the nether with my friends and we went to the fortress and it was invisible, but we could see the mobs in the chest. Oh, those are the best. Yes. Oh, Chris Cartea. Okay. He's more of a performance modder though. I don't think I've ever seen anything from him that's been like cosmetic at all. That's not bad. He does make some really nice performance mods, but I don't think I've ever really seen him do cosmetic stuff. Bye, Hawkeye. Thanks for the wonderful stream. As always, had a blast. A blast. As usual, thanks everyone for stopping by. Everyone have a swell day. Thank you for stopping by, Trico. We're going to be wrapping up here in a second, too. So, thank you. Nerf. Oh well, I remember that blaster. Dartsoft Association. Oh my gosh. I'm indifferent to him, but his work is great. I'm staying till. Okay, well, till the end. Okay, well, we might as well end it here. Because I do want to wrap this up. I'm getting hoarse talking. I'm not used to talking this long anymore. It's been almost 2 hours, an hour 55. My bud, hope your days are full of pizza and root beer. I just had pizza yesterday, actually. Thanks for a great stream by Killer of Creams. You guys are hilarious. Okay. Thank you guys very much for watching, especially after all of this time being away. I know I streamed like a month ago. Apparently it was a month. I know I streamed like a month ago, but that was really kind of a review that I had to get up. This is more of like back to modding and stuff, and it has definitely been a minute. So I do appreciate all you guys for coming back. Homely, thank you so much for posting that in the Discord. I really appreciate that as well. Thank you guys all for your compliments, and hopefully we can get this guy done before. You know what? Let's just be optimistic and say before the end of the year. No, we'll try to get it done faster than that, but these parts are gonna kill me. Anyway, thank you guys for watching, and end stream.